The Lyrothi homeworld, Silnara, shuddered beneath the firestorm. From orbit, the view was apocalyptic, dozens of massive warships burning in swirling plasma, moons reduced to fractured debris, and sprawling cities reduced to ash and silence. The great spiral nebula of their system glowed dimly, a cosmic witness to their last stand. Inside the shattered command center, Counselor Veshera's fingers trembled as she tapped the final sequence. The ship's loudspeakers hissed with static before falling silent. No time remained for speeches, for pleas or diplomacy. Only one option: the distress call, ancient, encrypted, and laced with desperation. It was not a message meant for their own people. It was a beacon sent beyond the borders of known space. A warning signal coded in the ancient galactic standard for help needed, extreme emergency. It carried no address, no signature, only a single, urgent call: save us. And in the cold, black beyond Silnara, far past the reaches of their scanners and hope, a shadow stirred. The signal's journey was measured in years, crossing light years of silence. It was a cry born from the brink of extinction, a plea sent into the void for a hand to grasp. Few species still answered, fewer still dared to listen. Deep in the forgotten stretch of Orion's outer rim, an ancient relay station, Earthnets, dormant, rusted and battered from centuries of neglect, its antennas barely scraped the atmosphere of a dead moon. Its systems, though old, still flickered faintly, like a dying heartbeat. At the center, the Guardian node stirred, an AI sentinel built before the fall of Earth's golden age, designed to watch and wait. It processed the burst of data streaming in from the distant Lyrothi system with cold efficiency. The message was clear: help needed, desperation. Extinction. In orbit around Sol, the Vox Aeternum hung silently, once a legend whispered about by Galactic. Navissa warship, forged in humanity's darkest conflicts, crewed by those bred for violence and victory. Now it was an ark, carrying frozen soldiers from a war that scarred the stars. For centuries, its crew lay in suspended animation, waiting for the moment the galaxy screamed loud enough. That moment had come, deep inside the Vox. Commander Alira Voss opened her eyes. She woke to the hiss of atmospheric systems and the familiar cold glow of tactical monitors flickering to life. Her body ached, the old muscles still remembered the feel of battle. Her mind raced through protocols she had not used in decades. The brutal lessons of countless wars etched into her very bones. Beside her, the cryochambers opened, and the crew of hardened veterans emerged: soldiers, tacticians, killers. The war-born humanity's last defense and its greatest curse. Alira stood, gazing out at the stars beyond the viewport. The galaxy had changed, but she knew one thing: some wars never ended. They only waited. Aboard the Lyrothi flagships, Counselor Veshera's voice crackled across the communication channels, weak but resolute. To the species of the Outer Rim, to those who can hear us, we beg your aid. The Karnics consume all, we are losing everything. There was no reply back. On the Vox, the message replayed endlessly on the command deck. Alira's jaw clenched. The Karnics, she murmured. They're worse than the Dominion, worse than any enemy we faced. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Kalen Rowe, adjusted the holomap glowing between them. Multiple incursions, faster than anything we've seen. They consume entire systems with no warning, no negotiation. Their bioweapons alone could sterilize planets. Alira nodded grimly. Then we give them something to negotiate with. We end this. Outside the ship, the stars gleamed cold and indifferent. But humanity was awake. They had been cast out of the galaxy once declared too dangerous, too violent. The last wars had nearly erased them, but in the dark they had survived. And now the galaxy's oldest survivors had been called back into the light in the Lyrathi colonies. Refugees crowded into shelters, listening for any sign that salvation was coming. Rumors of the humans' deadly, brutal, unstoppable spread like wildfire. Some prayed, some trembled, most simply waited. On the bridge of the Vox Eternum, Commander Voss made her choice. Prepare for warp jump to Lyrathi space, she commanded. Her voice was cold steel. They sent a call, we answer, and with a flash of white light, humanity re-entered the war. Asterisk, the cryocambers hissed open like tombs, releasing the dead. Rows upon rows of soldiers emerged, faces pale, bodies stiff, eyes sharp with decades of battle memory locked inside frozen flesh. They were humanity's ghosts, born from endless war and tempered in fire. They had been put away like relics, weapons too dangerous to wield in a time of peace. Now they were called back. Commander Alira Voss watched them awaken with a mixture of pride and cold calculation. These were not diplomats, not scientists, not idealists. They were killers, warborn, and every one of them understood the price of failure. Lieutenant Kalen Rowe moved beside her, activating the tactical display. We're 40 light years from Lyrathi space. Our jump window opens in 20 minutes. Alira's eyes narrowed. That's not enough time to prepare them for what's coming. Kalen smirked. They've waited longer. In the cargo hold, the soldiers gathered quickly, uniforms donned, weapons calibrated. They moved with practiced precision, though. Some still bore the marks of centuries in stasis. Jorik, the ship's senior sergeant, barked orders. His voice was gravel, cold as a winter storm. Listen up, he shouted. The Karniks don't negotiate. They consume. We do one thing: kill. Anyone who can't do that can stay frozen. The room grew deadly silent. None hesitated. Alira stepped forward. We're not here to make friends. We're here to end a war that's already lost to many. The Lyrathi asked for help. They called us monsters. They'll learn that monsters can be salvation. Above them, the bridge hummed with activity. The AI, known as Sentinel, flickered to life, integrating decades of lost human war data with fresh tactical input from the Lyrathi scientists who had volunteered to join the mission. Calum pointed at the holographic star map. The Karniks have no central command. They operate like a swarm fast, brutal, relentless. If we don't strike first, we lose everything. Alira nodded. Then we make sure they never strike again. Meanwhile, deep in Lyrathi space, panic and despair spread like wildfire. On the planet Silithus, the largest of the outer colonies, the Karniks' fleet loomed like a black storm blotting out the sun. Their bioships pulsated with eerie light, alien and menacing. Surface defenses struggled to hold, but the Karniks attacked. With savage efficiency from a command bunker, Ambassador Kalin watched the incoming transmission from the Vox Et. The humans were unlike anything the Lyrathi had ever seen, hulking figures in advanced armor, their weapons unfamiliar and terrifying. They fight with no hesitation, Kalin said, voice barely steady. Are they saviors or harbingers of a new destruction? Back on the Vox, the jump engines charged with a deep, resonant hum. The air vibrated with tension. Lyra gathered her senior officers. This is what we were made for. No retreats, no mercy. The Karniks end here, Lieutenant. Ro looked to her, eyes steely. "Do you think the Lyrothi can trust us?" Alira's face was unreadable. Trust is a luxury they can't afford. Survival isn't. With a sudden burst of light, the Vox Eternum slipped through the warp tunnel, stars stretching into lines of pure motion. Time and space folded around them, delivering humanity's warborn back into a galaxy that had forgotten their name. They emerged in orbit over Silithus seconds before the Carnix began their orbital bombardment. Alira's voice cut through the comms. "Open fire." The Vox unleashed hell. Railgun slugs tore through Carnix bioships like meteors, tearing flesh and metal alike. Swarms of autonomous drones surged forth, hunting the enemy relentlessly. The bridge crew worked in perfect sync, humans and Lyrothi, scientists coordinating strikes with surgical precision. The Carnix howled in pain, their hive mind faltering under the barrage, but the humans didn't pause. Their attacks were merciless, total. Within 17 minutes, the Carnix fleet was shattered. Down on Silithus, survivors stared in disbelief as the nightmare lifted. The sky cleared. Silence replaced the howling swarm. Ambassador Kalen breathed a long, shaky sigh. They saved us. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a whisper of doubt lingered. At what cost? On the Vox Eternum, Alira turned from the viewport, her face hard. "This is only the beginning," she said. Her soldiers, still cold from centuries of sleep, readied for the war to come. They were the deadliest species the galaxy had ever known, and they had just answered the call. The sky above Silithus burned with unnatural light streaks of plasma and fiery explosions tearing through the void. The Lyrothi watched, hearts pounding, as the Vox Eternum and its fleet laid waste to the Carnix swarm. Yet, as the carnage unfolded, a wave of unease rippled through the survivors. "They don't fight like we do," Ambassador Kalen whispered to her aides. Her eyes, wide with shock, never left the viewports. "They don't hesitate. They don't negotiate." Commander Alira Voss stood on the bridge of the Vox, her face a hard mask beneath the sharp glow of tactical displays. The carnage wasn't. Collateral damage to hurt was the mission. The Carnix were a cancer, spreading unchecked, devouring everything in their path. To save one world, thousands more would have to burn. Lieutenant Kalen Rowe's voice broke the silence. "We could have tried to contain them, maybe." Alira's gaze cut through him like a blade. "Containment means waiting for them to return, to kill again. We don't negotiate with monsters, we exterminate them." The Lyrothi scientists on the bridge murmured among themselves, horrified by the sheer ruthlessness. Their species valued diplomacy, patience, mercy. To them, war was a last resort. To the humans, it was a tool honed to deadly perfection. One scientist, a young woman named Yessa, approached Alira hesitantly. "Commander, your methods, they're effective, but so brutal. We've never seen such destruction." Alira looked, at her eyes cold but not unkind. "We survive by being the best killers. Mercy is a luxury we can't afford." Meanwhile, on the surface of Silithus, the aftermath was grim. Cities lay in ruins, smoke rising from shattered towers. Survivors tended to the wounded amid the wreckage. The Lyrothi soldiers, though relieved, struggled to reconcile their gratitude with the horrifying cost. A young Lyrothi mother held her child tightly. Did the humans save us, or destroy us? Her question echoed through the ruined streets. Back aboard the Vox, sensors picked up a new signal. Carnix reinforcements emerging from a nearby jump point. their bioships streaming in like vultures circling fresh prey. Illyria's jaw tightened. Prepare for another assault. We finish this now, or we lose everything. The crew readied weapons, engines thrumming in anticipation. The Karnics swarmed the human fleet with savage fury. Their bioships rammed and clawed, releasing clouds of acidic spores and dark energy pulses. The battle quickly became a brutal melee of fire and blood. Illyria led the charge personally, piloting her strike fighter through the chaos. Her voice, steady overcomes, cut through the fear. No mercy, kill or be killed. The humans' firepower tore the swarm apart, but the Karnics adapted their hive mind shifting tactics, pushing the humans back. The Vox's shields flickered under concentrated strikes. Kalen shouted, "Commander, they're breaking through the outer defense grid." Illyria gritted her teeth. "Deploy the Blackwave drones. Cut off their advance." The drones surged forward, swarming the enemy with nanoweapons designed to disrupt biological and mechanical systems alike. The Karnics' fleet faltered, confusion rippling through their ranks. Yet despite the turning tide, the human soldiers never paused. Every kill was precise, every strike calculated. There was no room for hesitation, only victory. On the Leorothi command deck, Ambassador Kalen struggled to mask her conflicted emotions. They had survived, thanks to these humans, but at what price? She turned to Illyrio the Elder, his face lined with sorrow. "Do you think we can live with this?" The Elder's reply was grim. "If these are the monsters that save us, then perhaps the monsters are what we need." As the battle subsided, the Vox launched its final striker, devastating kinetic bombardment aimed directly at the Karnics' biohive floating near Silithus's orbit. The biohive exploded in a brilliant, sickly green inferno, the screams of dying creatures echoing through space. The Leorothi watched in stunned silence as the nightmare was purged. Later, in the quiet aftermath, Illyria convened her officers. "We've bought the Leorothi time," she said, "but the Karnics won't stop. They'll come back, bigger and deadlier." Kalen nodded. "We need to prepare for total war." Illyria's eyes flashed with fierce resolve. "Then we give them a war they won't survive." On the ground, the Leorothi began to rebuild, wary of the price their saviors had paid and demanded. Ambassador Kalen, standing beneath the broken skies, whispered to herself, "Mercy is a luxury, but it may be the only hope we have left." Asterisk, the Vox. Eternium drifted silently in orbit above Silithus, its dark hull reflecting the shattered starscape like a mirror to a forgotten era. Inside, Commander Illyria Voss paced the command deck, the weight of centuries heavy on her shoulders. Around her, the crew settled into grim routines, their eyes haunted by memories long buried. Lieutenant Kalen Rowe approached cautiously, the tactician's calm a stark contrast to Illyria's restless energy. "You're thinking about the past," he said quietly. Illyria nodded without looking up. "We were cast out, labeled monsters, dangerous, uncontrollable. Across the galaxy, the history of humanity was whispered in fear. Once rulers of entire star systems, their empire collapsed beneath the weight of endless wars. They had been branded war criminals, genocidal, merciless, unstoppable. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council exiled humanity to the outer rim, forbidding contact, condemning them to isolation. But humanity survived. They adapted. They grew harder. Illyria stared at the holographic map, tracing the roots of ancient wars with a finger trembling not from age, but from the memories it stirred. "We were too violent, too brutal for the peace they wanted. Kalon studied her, understanding the turmoil beneath her hardened exterior. And yet, here we are. The galaxy's last hope. Alira's voice was a whisper, because no one else could answer the call. In the dimmed briefing room, Alira convened her senior officers. The Lerothi observers sat silent, uneasy. They knew little of humanity's past and even less of the Warburn who now fought alongside them. Alira's gaze swept the room. We don't pretend to be heroes. We don't come with promises of peace or mercy. We come with one purpose: to kill what threatens this galaxy. A murmur rose among the Lerothi scientists. One elder spoke carefully. Your people were once our enemies. Now you fight for us. Why? Alira's eyes flickered with a rare softness. Because some monsters don't change. They only wait. That night, in the quiet halls of the Vox, Alira sat alone. A data crystal rested on the table, a relic from humanity's last great war. She activated it, revealing scenes of devastation, scorched planets, fleets burning, soldiers lost in endless battle. Her voice broke the silence. We made the galaxy pay for fearing us. We became what they feared. Meanwhile, on Silithus, Ambassador Kalon met with her council, wrestling with uneasy truths. The humans were their saviors, but at a cost. Can we trust those who were once our enemies? She asked the chamber. An elder replied, Trust is not a gift. It's earned or forced. Kalon nodded slowly. We will have to watch closely. Back on the Vox, the AI Sentinel processed reams of ancient military data, cross-referencing it with current intelligence on the Carnix. The verdict was clear. Humanity's brutal tactics were often the only way to survive against relentless enemies. Alira stood before her crew. We don't do this because we want to. We do it because we must. The galaxy's peace is a fragile thing, kept only by those willing to fight in the shadows. As dawn crept over Silithus, the Warborn prepared for what lay ahead. The Carnix were still out there waiting, hunting, evolving. Alira's final words before the next mission were clear. We don't just fight to survive. We fight so the galaxy never forgets that when you call the deadliest species, we will come. The Warburn nodded, ready to face the nightmare again. The silence after the battle was fragile, like the calm before a storm. The Vox Atenum and its allied ships gathered their wounded and counted their losses, but no one dared to relax. The Carnix were retreating for now, but their hive mind was far from broken. Somewhere in the dark, it was growing, adapting, and preparing to strike back with a fury that could swallow entire systems. Commander Alira Voss stood on the bridge, her jaw clenched as the new tactical displays lit up with red warnings. Sensor arrays picked up a vast approaching fleet, far larger than the last. The Carnix were returning them. They were bringing reinforcements. Lieutenant Kalon Rowe's voice was steady but grim. The enemy fleet is at least 3 times our size. They've learned from our tactics. Alira's eyes narrowed. Then we'll have to fight smarter and harder. Deep within the labyrinth of the Vox, the war-born soldiers prepared themselves again, checking weapons, running simulations, and sharpening their instincts. In the shadows, whispers circulated among them about the Carnix's relentless adaptability, their hive mind's terrifying ability to coordinate and evolve. But the Warburn thrived on challenge. Sergeant Jurek spat into a basin, growling, They think they can overwhelm us with numbers. Let them come. We're not just survivors, we're hunters. The Lerothi scientists worked feverishly alongside. Human engineers, attempting to develop new weapons and defenses to counter the Carnix's relentless biological onslaught. In the labs below the Vox's command decks, vials of exotic compounds and samples of Carnix tissue were dissected under high-intensity scans. Yes, sir, the young scientist looked up at Alira during one briefing. Their hive mind, it's unlike anything we've seen. If it spreads, it could destabilize entire sectors. Alira nodded, her voice low, which is why we have to stop it now. The first clash came without warning, as the Vox fleet orbited a small strategic star system. The Carnix swarm burst forth in a tide of dark, living ships. Their bioforms pulsed and writhed, shifting shapes to evade plasma fire. Swarms of smaller creatures scuttling and ferocious swarmed toward the human vessels. The battle was brutal. A maelstrom of energy and flesh, Alira piloted her fighter into the heart of the swarm, weaving through arcs of acidic tendrils and bursting spores. Over the coms, her voice rang out. Hold formation. Focus fire on the hive vessels. Explosions rocked the fleet as railguns and plasma cannons tore through the enemy's ranks, yet the Carnix adapted quickly, changing formations, using sacrificial drones to absorb attacks. Lieutenant Rowe shouted, "They're trying to flank us, diverting forces to the starboard side." Alira's mind raced. Reinforce starboard defense. Deploy nanodrones to disrupt their neural links. The swarm faltered as the nanodrones hit, disrupting the hive mind's connection momentarily. But the cost was high. Several human ships burned, including a key frigate that exploded in a fireball. On the bridge of the Vox, alarms blared. "Casualties rising," reported the tactical officer. Alira's voice was steel. "We can't afford to lose momentum. Push forward. We break their swarm or die trying." In the chaos, a young war-born soldier named Lyra faced down a Carnix assault drone on the surface of a battered moon. Her pulse rifle jammed, and with no time to reload, she drew a combat knife and charged. The drone hissed, mechanical jaws snapping. She plunged the blade deep into its core. Back in orbit, the Vox launched its experimental weapon, an energy pulse, designed to sever the hive mind's control over its swarm. The pulse rippled through space, and for a moment the Carnix ships slowed, disoriented. "Now," Alira ordered. The fleet surged, cutting through the disrupted swarm with savage precision. But the fight was far from over. After hours of bloodshed, the Carnix retreated, leaving behind a field of smoldering wreckage and silence. The Vox and allied ships regrouped, battered but unbroken. Later, in the command room, Alira faced her officers. "We survived today," she said, voice heavy but determined. "But the Carnix won't stop. They'll adapt again. We need new strategies, new alliances, or the galaxy falls." Lieutenant Rowe nodded. "We must be ready to become what the galaxy fears, to fight fire with fire." Alira's gaze hardened. "Then let's show them what humanity's warborn can do." Across the stars, the Carnix hive pulsed with unnatural life, preparing its next move. And humanity, the deadliest species the galaxy had ever known, stood ready to meet it. Asterisk. The Vox Atenum drifted quietly in orbit over the shattered moon of Silithus. The stars beyond seemed indifferent to the suffering unfolding beneath them, indifferent to the endless cycle of death and survival. Inside the ship, the tension was palpable, silent, yet suffocating. Commander Alira Voss stood alone in the observation chamber, her reflection flickering alongside the broken surface of the moon. The battle had been won, but at a cost she could feel deep in her bones. Lieutenant Kalen Rowe entered quietly, breaking the heavy silence. The fleet's repair crews are working non-stop, but the losses... Illyra didn't look away from the viewport. They're more than numbers, Kalen. Each is a story ended, a future erased. The war-burned soldiers bore the physical and psychological scars of countless battles, but even they were not immune to the growing fatigue. In the dim corridors of the Vox, whispers of doubt surfaced among the ranks. Sergeant Jorick, usually a pillar of stoicism, sat slumped against a bulkhead, staring at the floor. How many more will we lose before this ends? A younger soldier, Lyra, approached him quietly. We fight because no one else will. Jorick looked up, eyes tired but fierce. That doesn't make it easier. The Lyrothi scientists observed the war-born with a mixture of awe and unease. Yessa, in particular, struggled to reconcile humanity's brutal efficiency with her own people's values of mercy and diplomacy in the lab. She confided to Ambassador Kalen, their methods are effective, but ... at what cost? If we become too dependent on them, do we risk losing ourselves? Kellen's reply was solemn. We are caught between extinction and survival. Sometimes the price is higher than we want to pay. Illyra convened a council to address the mounting strain on their forces. The room was filled with officers, scientists, and Lyrothi leaders, each carrying their own burdens. We cannot fight this war as we have been, Illyra said, voice steely but weary. The Karnics will adapt, and so must we. But the cost of each victory is growing. Lieutenant Rose suggested we need to find their source, the heart of their hive mind. Destroy it, and the swarm collapses. The Lyrothi elder nodded. But reaching it means going deeper into Karnic space than ever before. It's a suicide mission. Illyra's gaze hardened. If we don't strike now, there won't be a tomorrow. As preparations began for the perilous mission, Illyra took a moment to reflect on her own past. The memories of battles fought long ago, many lost, haunted her. The faces of comrades fallen, the silence of endless voids, the bitter price of survival. Her voice barely a whisper, she admitted to Kalen, I've lived through too many wars. Sometimes I wonder if this one will be the last... Or if we're just the monsters the galaxy fears. Kalen placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Monsters can be heroes to Illyra. Sometimes it's the only way. The Warborn prepared for the mission into the heart of Karnic's territory, knowing the dangers that awaited. The Vox would lead the strike teams more fast and deadly. As the fleet moved out, the tension was almost tangible. Every soldier knew that this could be their final battle. Illyra's voice echoed through the comms. This is our chance to end it all. Fight with everything you have. For humanity, for the galaxy. Deep in the darkness of Karnic space, the biohive pulsed with unholy energy. Its tendrils reached out like a living web, spreading death and decay. The swarm sensed the approaching threat, its hive mind growing furious. The final battle was coming. The darkness of Karnic space was absolute, a void so deep that even the distant light of dying stars barely pierced its blackness. The Vox Eternum led the strike fleet, a sleek spearhead cutting into the heart of the enemy. Every sensor was on high alert, every crew member knew the stakes. This mission was a gamble with the galaxy's survival hanging in the balance. Commander Illyra Voss stood on the bridge, eyes sharp and unwavering. Around her, the hum of the ship was a low, steady heartbeat. The war-born soldiers prepared in the armory, weapons primed, minds steeled. They had trained for this moment, the assault on the Carnix. Biohive itself. Lieutenant Kalen rose, voice crackled, overcomes. Enemy defenses are heavy. The hive is protected by layered bioshields and swarms of sentry drones. We'll need precise strikes to break through. Alira nodded. We have no choice. We strike hard and fast. The hive must fall. The Vox dropped out of hyperspace just beyond the outer defenses of the biohive. Immediately, waves of Carnix bioships surged forward, grotesque and alien, their pulsating flesh gleaming with venomous bioluminescence. The battle erupted instantly. Alira took the helm, piloting her strike fighter with lethal precision. Plasma. Bolts and kinetic rounds tore through the swarm, but the Carnix countered with acid sprays and razor-sharp appendages. Shields down to 30%. Shouted the tactical officer. Divert all power to forward batteries. Alira ordered. Below decks, the warborn soldiers braced for their landing on the hive's surface. The dropships shook violently as biotendrils lashed at them during descent. Sergeant Jorik gritted his teeth, gripping his rifle. Keep tight formation. Watch your sectors. Lyra checked her ammo, determination burning in her eyes. We finish this, or we die trying. The dropships landed amidst a landscape of living flesh, and metal walls pulsating with sinew, corridors breathing as if alive. The air reeked of decay and acid dot inside the hive. The soldiers advanced carefully, navigating labyrinthine tunnels lined with pulsating veins. The Carnix's hive mind loomed ahead, a monstrous, throbbing core the size of a moon, surrounded by swarms of Bio-Guardians. Lyra led the assault squad, her pulse rifle blazing. Target the core. Disrupt their neural nexus. The Bio-Guardians attacked with savage fury, their razor claws slashing and acid spraying. One soldier fell, torn apart before the others could react. On the bridge, the Vox and fleet engaged enemy. Reinforcements desperately trying to break through the perimeter. Tactical displays flickered with warnings. Commander, the hive is sending a signal, calling more swarms. Alira's voice was fierce. Cut the signal. Fire the disruptors. The fleet unleashed a barrage of nanodrones designed to scramble Carnix communications. The bioswarms faltered, confused without their hive mind's guidance. Back inside the hive, the squad reached the neural core. The monstrous mass pulsed with sickly green light, veins writhing with raw power. Alira set the charges, voice steady. Despite the chaos, everyone, fall back. We have minutes before this place goes up. Explosions ripped through the tunnels as the charges detonated, shaking the hive to its foundations. Outside, the Vox and fleet began their retreat, dodging swarms of Carnix bioships now driven mad by the loss of their neural command. Alira's fighter darted through the chaos, leading the escape. All units, form up. We're getting out alive. As the strike fleet jumped to hyperspace, the biohive imploded behind them. A brilliant explosion consuming the monstrous heart of the Carnix swarm. The cost was Hylas's heavy, bodies lost, but the mission was a success. Back aboard the Vox, Alira looked out at the stars, exhaustion and relief washing over her. The Carnix threat had been crippled, but the war was far from over. Lieutenant Rowe approached quietly. We did it, ... but what now? Alira's eyes hardened. Now we make sure the galaxy remembers who saved it, and that the deadliest species the galaxy has ever known is still watching. Asterisk, the Vox Etenum floated silently in the aftermath of the carnage, its battered hull reflecting the dying embers of the Karnix biohive explosion. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath, a fragile pause after the storm. Commander Elira Voss stood on the bridge, eyes scanning the stars beyond. A vast canvas of light and darkness, promise and peril. Around her, the crew moved with quiet purpose, nursing wounds both visible and unseen. The Warband were survivors forged in fire. But even survivors carried scars. Lieutenant Kalen Rowe approached, carrying the weight of losses suffered. We struck the heart, Elira. The Karnix won't rise again, not for a long time, Elira. Nodded slowly, but her voice held no relief. The hive is destroyed, but the war isn't over. Darkness always returns. The Lyrathi ambassador, Kalen, arrived aboard the Vox for the first time since the battle. Her eyes, once filled with apprehension, now held a cautious respect. "You and your people saved us," she said quietly, "but at a terrible cost." Elira met her gaze. "We are not heroes, Ambassador. We're the weapons the galaxy feared because we survived when others didn't." Kalen studied her. "Your methods challenge everything we believed about mercy, about honor. What will become of us now that we've called upon monsters to save us?" Elira's answer was somber. "We all bear the price of survival. Mercy is a choice, and sometimes it's the hardest one to make." In the ship's medbay, Lyra sat beside Sergeant Jorik, both nursing wounds and lost comrades. The quiet between them was heavy. "Do you ever wonder if it was worth it?" Lyra asked, voice low. Jorik looked up, eyes tired but steady. "Every day. But if we hadn't fought, there'd be no tomorrow at all." Elira retreated to her quarters, the solitude a brief reprieve from endless command. She activated a holochive, revealing faces of war-born long-gone comrades. Friends, heroes, victims. Her voice was a whisper. "We are their legacy. We carry their fight." Outside, the Lyrothi began rebuilding, wary but hopeful. Their culture, once shattered, now faced the uneasy truth of relying on humanity's brutal strength. Ambassador Kalen stood amid the ruins, contemplating the future. Perhaps the monsters we feared are the guardians we need. As the Vox prepared to depart, Elira gathered her officers. "We saved a world, but the galaxy is vast, and threats linger in the dark. We remain vigilant." Lieutenant Rowe smiled faintly. "We are the Warborn, the deadliest species in the galaxy, and we will answer their cry for help every time." Elira's gaze was fierce and unwavering. "Because when the galaxy calls, we come." The Vox slipped into hyperspace, a silent sentinel among the stars. The Warborn's legacy was etched, not just in destruction, but in survival, sacrifice, and the harsh truth that sometimes monsters must be heroes.